Thank you, you're right.
We don't want, any more, do they?
I got it wrong.
They're ready. But Eliza's. This morning.
Just wondering whether you could do
Oh, okay.
Hey, John. Because we've got those months open now, and
So everybody.
so this is the second January.
To mention an announcement, but everybody clapped. They sang, and Joel said it was really wonderful. It was much better. Email me.
I'll send you those dates.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, right.
Oh, right. Oh, good. They got their practice from our area.
Yeah.
Stacy and Cindy.
Yes.
Roxanne. That's on mine.
Sure.
It was just like, it was on the solar.
Perfect being saved, right?
Warrant article passed.
I'm here.
Okay.
Didn't see the empty spot.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the select board meeting for today's date, December 20th, 2022. I'm Tyler Ward. Up here at the table with me are fellow select board members Bill Kennedy and Bill Taylor. Town Administrator Nicole McStay is over to my left here. And I see Mr. Betts from the Recreation Department out there and several members of the Recreation Committee and Power people. This is great. Tonight's meeting will include 3 public hearings, 2 that refer to RSA's 31:9-B, and then the other one is 41:14A. We'll tell you what those are when we get to them. After that, we'll have a presentation from the Peterborough Renewable Energy
Planning team.
Planning Team.
Prep team.
And then we'll have a vote to appoint people to some committees. And then later
Community
on-
Power
Community
Task
Power?
Force.
Community power.
Community Power Task Force.
Oh, that's right.
Provide a recommendation.
This is very tiny on my screen. Community Power Task Force. And then we'll authorize town administrator to execute a bunch of documents for town-owned property for sale. And then vote to approve minutes from December 6th. I don't know if any of you noticed when you came in, but our on-air sign is back up and working, so we are on air. And that means we're on Comcast Channel 22, Ustream, and YouTube, right, still? And of course, all our meetings are always archived for future viewing. We'd love to hear from everybody. If you do have a question or comment, raise your hand, I'll call on you, and just state your, even though we all probably know each other, just state your name for the record, because Ali Kreutz is taking minutes remotely. Tim Brezovic is behind the scenes. He fixed the on-air side, and he does all of our tech work remotely as well. So, up first, we'll start with public hearing on the acceptance of gifts, specifically donation for the skate park expansion, and that is one that is pursuant to RSA 31:9-B. So I would make a motion to open that public hearing. First. All those in favor? Aye. And where might our first testimony come from?
Actually, we'll turn this right over to Chris Anderson.
Excellent. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the Select Board, members of the Peterborough Recreation Committee, and residents. My name is Chris Anderson, and I'm here representing a group of community members who are interested in upgrading and revamping the skate park down at Adams Playground in conjunction with the Recreation Department. The Recreation Department hosted a meeting in early November, which several community members gathered at, including kids in the community who are actually using the skate park, and heard from them as to things that they wanted out of the skate park. And I think that Roxanne Loudon, who's also here and had done some work to raise money last year. Lisa had mentioned Eddie Adams' fund from years ago when his passing had been, monies had been donated to support renovations to the skate park. That those monies were available, and the Recreation Committee was looking to the community of what's the best way to incorporate that into making renovations. Additional members of the community showed up, including myself, and as the kids voiced sort of what they wanted, I think it quickly became obvious that the monies that we had in hand weren't enough to make the renovations that we wanted, and so we sort of kicked off a campaign to do a little bit more. We've raised over $32,000 already, and we are looking to raise more. We sort of I think what's here is sort of a rendering of some of the improvements that we want, the things in gray in the distance, the three things in gray, and the one maybe item to the left is really all that's there now. Everything in brown would be new, so it's more than doubling what we would be proposing to do there, with the biggest focus being on making things a lot smaller. They look big, but they're actually a lot smaller and gentler, and the park is really for advanced riders only. A lot of people go down there, but everyone's intimidated by what's there. The kids can't learn. It's all too big. And so we want to just have a lot smaller features and progressions moving up from 2, 3, 4 feet, 2, 3, and 4 before they get to the 5-foot stuff, which is really what's there now. And so really to encourage, a learning environment for the kids. And so we wanted to raise awareness about the project. We do have a series of donations. I spoke with Nicole about that, and I'm a little confused because I know that some public projects have been done in the past, like the pump track, where monies were donated and sort of funds were not handled by the town at all, and they were just sort of used to to make the improvements there. And so I guess my question is, we do have some donations, including one by myself, and maybe sort of 5, 6 other individuals where we'd like to receive a confirmation from the town that this is a tax-deductible donation given in the year of 2022. And if that is the case, confirming one, that those monies can be held until the springtime when we actually need the funds. So I'll sort of pause there and see if I can get an affirmative from the select board of town that we don't need to spend the money in this year if we raise the money in this year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's correct, thank you. And then the second would be, if we do give that money to the town, I think Lisa and I were talking, we're unaware of exactly how that money would then need to get sort of allocated to the project. I'm willing to actually build the project on my credit card and then just come back to the town and basically hand in my receipts and sort of my credit card receipts, and then for simplicity just sort of have the town pay me back, if that's acceptable to the town, rather than sort of having to have you cut a check for a box of nails and a piece of wood and something like that. So
That's a little more complicated. I would need to talk to the finance director before we figure that out, but what the selectmen can do tonight is, if you have a total dollar amount you're looking to contribute, they can accept that gift tonight, and then we can figure out the mechanism after that, how that will happen.
Okay, I think, I guess I've been representing that, that I think, talking with Lisa, that this can be sort of a community-led project, including community labor in terms of building some of these features down there. And so I think there's interest in doing that, and I think the people that are willing to donate, some have already done so, like I mentioned, the Eddie Adams Fund and others. I think there's a little bit of concern that the money gets sort of lost into the town budget somehow, or
We would dedicate it an escrow fund for this.
Okay, and then, yeah, and then I guess just sort of the red tape of getting the money back, for the project, a little.
That
some-
would be the
again.
bigger challenge, and then I'm also, because we haven't talked about this before, if we do a reimbursement, then as far as our filings to the IRS look like, you're the only one donating and not necessarily all these folks. So if we receive checks from everybody, then we're able to send out the thank you letters.
No, right, so
Right.
the checks would come from the individuals, and so
Okay.
the town would issue those 5 or 6 letters that people
Okay.
have asked for. Then when it comes time to then spend the money, what I'm saying is rather than you write a check to Bell Tates or to Carroll Concrete or to this, that, you would just write one check to me, or, maybe it's a couple checks,
We
but
can
just sort of
sort
to
that.
simplify that
We
process.
can sort that out later.
Great. Well then, like I said, we've raised approximately $32,000. I think the amount, let me just do some quick math here because I didn't have this sort of added up, but 25, 27, 27, 28, 28 to 30. So $28,230 is the amount that we would like to submit tonight.
Say that again, Chris.
$28,230. We received over $32,000 in donations, but the other monies have come in, and everyone that came to the meeting in early November, all those individuals have contributed to the project. Every single person that came to that meeting is showing their support of the project, both by showing up and voicing their wishes for the park, but also contributing financially. But not everybody, some checks are $100, $200, they don't need a letter from the town. So, but for these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 individuals, in total of $28,230. So if we could, I guess, officially make a motion to have that accepted by the town and allocated to the project.
Well, I have a question, which may be several questions. How was the original skate park built, paid for? Could we remind everyone? At least,
The money were raised and it was built by American Ramp Company back in 2008, and I believe some town funds went to it also.
so they were a professional company? that-
Yes.
Next question. You mentioned potential volunteer construction labor. What kind of liability does that set up the town for if it's not installed by a professional company? I hate to have to ask that question, but we have to ask
It
it.
can't be that big of a deal because the whole entire playground was built off of sweat equity and volunteers. And
That's true, but yes, Roxanne.
Francistown might be a good place to ask that question too, because theirs is it's a DIY park.
It is.
Yeah, so they have a skate park that people just go in and
Add to.
do stuff.
They're constantly building and
Yeah.
adding to that. And some of the members of that community are here.
Yeah,
We did ask that question too, Lisa, because again, that was a big, we don't want to, in contrast, Keene is upgrading their skate park at this point. I don't know if people are aware of that. They're doing a renovation of their park, and so they've raised a bunch of money and they've hired a professional company, and that company is charging sort of 10x what we think we can do this for, with people who are in the skating community who are both builders and contractors and people that have their tools, have their trade, can bring down their equipment. And I know the town has equipment available for use, trucks to bring in dirt and or pick up wood from Bell Tates, who I won't commit them to having contributed, but they said they have a donation
Lisa's got me.
fund. So folks like that who are going to reach out to the community for donations of materials and things. So I'm not sure if I adequately answered your question.
No,
but-
I appreciate that. Kind of what I wanted to hear, yeah. Lisa wanted to add to that, yeah?
I did talk to Primex, our risk manager for insurance, and he didn't see any problem with it. We would do we have certain rules, the kids don't play with the chainsaws and whatnot, but he didn't see it. He really didn't.
Kind of takes the fun out of it.
Yeah.
I have a chainsaw park.
No skateboarding with a chainsaw. Roxanne, you wanted to add something? or-
No, I was just gonna say too, like, depending on what the design ends up looking like, final product, like, a lot of this stuff is kits too, like, a lot of companies sell specific dimensions. Obviously, it'll be a little bit different because you mock this up, right?
Right.
But it's again, like, and I was just gonna say what you already said, is that a lot of the, like, my generation and his generation are carpenters and builders, and we're at the meeting that we had in November, where, like, they're gonna be helping kids and mentoring children on how to do this stuff. So it's kind of like an all-encompassing project, not just building a skate park.
Right.
The one other thing I'll say is, in talking to, I don't know if there was a question potentially coming about maintenance, but we did talk to Lisa about maintenance, and, the rec department is, obviously we're doing this in collaboration with them, and so whatever, maintenance that would sort of go, would come up as a result of adding more, things there, Lisa has talked about being in support of, with the recreation budget.
Any other board questions?
Yeah, not necessarily a question, well, it is a question. How's this gonna work? We're gonna open up an account, we're gonna put money in the account, we're gonna accept the gift, put the money in the account. Can that account be added to subsequently without our,
No,
Motion.
you will have to continue
Each
to
continue.
accept, yeah. That's one of the really annoying things. Anytime you have unanticipated revenues, you have to have a public hearing to accept them. So,
Before the money goes in the account?
Before the money even, technically, yes, before the money even goes into the account.
So, sorry
We'll figure that out later.
maybe to elaborate on your question, or to sort of raise a question in follow-up, I don't have the checks here with me today. And so, we're hoping to, get the
No, that's not the
acceptance
problem.
by
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
and then get the checks to the town by the 31st.
Yes.
And then subsequent letters can be mailed out to the individuals who make those donations in January for their April filing. We are going to continue to raise money in the new year, and when we have a pool of money where people want a 2023 tax deductible donation, we'll bring those monies to you.
That's perfect.
I'm not bringing you the additional 4,000, and I actually don't even plan to give the town the 4,000 that people don't need letters for. I'm going to just hold on to it and spend it. And so.
That the ice cream flavors.
And so, I think that's how it was done at the pump track.
Yeah, and it's
is-
the same, like, I have $800 at home, and then whatever donation, like, my husband and I will make too, like, we're just gonna hold on to it, or I'll give it to you.
Okay,
It's, yeah.
okay, so sorry, I think I folded your 730 in here.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's,
If you wanted a letter, that,
no, it's like,
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about
So,
it.
okay, so 27.5. is the
Sorry.
number. Change to 27.5.
Okay, I make a
Sorry.
motion that we accept the $27,500 on behalf of the group that wants to improve the skate park.
Before you do that, want to check to see if there's any other questions or comments from.
Does anybody have any other items to add to that? Any other questions? That's the motion on the table.
Sorry.
I second that motion. All those in favor?
I'd say aye.
All right.
Aye. Yeah, that's great, very exciting. Again, volunteers and money, it's great. And it's for kids. And I love the idea that you're gonna have the kids help build it, that's great.
Well, yeah, what if there's like a 70-year-old or 8-year-old that wants to learn how to skateboard? They can't go skateboard on 5 foot.
Yeah, the pickleball extension.
You never know.
Pickleball skateboarders.
Great, and so, we're gonna, the goal would be to, continue to raise money until March or April, and then, whatever money we have at that point, finalize the design and sort of build as many of these things as we can, and, hopefully continue to raise money and expand the park as we go forward.
Have you branded your group yet?
We have not. We need an acronym. What's the other one? PrEP? Is that the other one?
Prep.
Yes.
That one's already taken. That's what we want.
Nice try.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Although we're very happy to see you're using the renewable energy of children.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good then. Up next, another public hearing pursuant to RSA 41:4.
Close the
Yes, officially close the.
Dash A will come up right after we close this.
Great.
motion to close.
Second. All those in favor?
All right.
That one's closed. All right, RSA 41:14-A. This is the sale of town-owned property that's out on that's Greenfield Road, yeah. 1 acre parcel. This is our third of 2 public hearings, right?
Our fourth?
Is this our
I
fourth?
think it's our fourth of two.
Fourth of two.
Yes.
Might be our fourth.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, so this is the one, this is it?
This is it, and then you've got the vote at your next meeting.
But the reason we've had several is because more information has come to light, and we've had the opportunity now. Oh, I'd like to make a motion that we open that public hearing.
I said,
All those in favor? Aye. It'll be efficient.
Yeah.
So we've got information back from the Conservation Commission, and they've put together a letter. I'm the liaison, the select board liaison to the Conservation Commission, and I joined several of their members on a site visit, to see what was going on with the parcel and verified that, yes, you want to give a little history for some of the people that may not know what we're talking about?
Sure, so 730 Greenfield Road is a small single-family home, and immediately next to it is an acre of town-owned land that was taken for taxes in the 90s. There's nothing on that piece of town-owned land, and that's the land that we're considering right now. In the early 2000s, the home that originally stood at 730 Greenfield Road burned. When the home was reconstructed, its general situation on the property moved a little bit, and the driveway was reconfigured so that it encroaches onto that piece of town-owned land right next to it. That town-owned land has a little bit of upland, but it's mostly wet. The vast majority of it is wet. That is where part of the Kentucky River opens up into some broad wetlands. So it's that whole area around there is wet. The prior home at 730 had been there for decades. And so when it was rebuilt, it was, even though you could not have built it there under current zoning or current wetland protection rules, it was grandfathered in. But with the encroachment, we now had a situation where the driveway, and then as succeeding property owners owned it, the backyard of that property was extended onto the town-owned land. And so this didn't come to light for the town until the property was sold late in the summer. And the new homeowners found themselves owning a piece of property that was different from the property that they believed that they had purchased. They had thought they had purchased, the entire backyard, and the entire driveway. So once that came to light, we took a look at it, and we could see no purpose to the town owning this little 1 acre lot, but could see lots of good reasons why the abutting property owner should own that 1 acre lot. And so they've made an offer to the selectmen to purchase it. Selectmen have generally agreed, but need to hold a series of public hearings to make that transfer. So it requires RSA 4114A is a complicated RSA. In addition to requiring 2 public hearings that may be held no more than 14 days apart, no less than 7 days apart. It also requires a vote of the selectmen at a 3rd meeting to be held not less than 7, not more than 14 days after the 2nd public hearing. In addition to that, the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission, and the Heritage Commission are all required to meet, discuss, and submit their opinions on the virtue of selling this piece of town-owned property. All of which seems pretty ridiculous for a very tiny piece of land.
Yeah, and this is now the 4th time that we've
Exactly.
heard all of this.
So, so that is how we got to here. So,
But with this,
Yes.
it was good that the Concom weighed in and that we did take that site visit.
yes.
And I think their letter really kind of sums up what we should follow when we do carry out this sale. Very concerned about the wetlands and making sure the wetlands are delineated so there's no further encroachment. There is a shed that was built many, many years ago right on the wetland, right
In the town-owned piece.
Town-owned
Yes.
piece, yes. So their recommendation, and I would have to agree, is for the town to take that shed down prior to the sale. Just to make sure that it's not improved or used in the future within the wetlands, because, the town prides itself in conserve land, and it's now, it's now a law to stay out of wetlands, right? I mean, you can't really encroach, so that was really just, should I read their entire letter? We've all read the letter.
Yeah, the comment that I wanted to make is that, and I talked with Francie this afternoon, Francie Von Burton, who's the chairman of the Concom. And she really stressed that we need to delineate the wetlands in that space.
Yeah.
And I suggested that perhaps the proceeds from the sale go to pay for that process.
Yeah, but that's the discussion we had within the Concom too.
Okay.
I thought that was a good route to go.
I agree with that. And in fact, she had mentioned that we shouldn't make the sale until such things happen.
That's something to think about.
That's certainly something to discuss. I mean, the only question that's before the board and the public assembled is whether or not the land should be sold.
Right.
That's really it. So everything else can be taken up later.
When we go into
When you go into
negotiations.
negotiations, exactly, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes me feel better,
Yeah.
because then we'll have some control over
Yeah,
that.
exactly. You don't have to hammer it out right here.
We're
right now.
we're not going to expect the owners to delineate the wetlands. I
No.
don't think they'll do it. I don't think they have the resources to do it.
We can't mandate that they continue to respect that either, so
Sure.
it's all moot, but anyways.
All right. Anybody have any questions? Anything you'd like to add? Yes?
My name is Nora Hanka.
Hi.
I have a question regarding the obligation of the owner of the home adjacent to the land, whether they would be required to observe wetland protections after the sale, whether or not, it's delineated. For example, I'd be concerned about them putting lawn chemicals that leach into the wetland, and what are their responsibilities, and how is that monitored?
All property owners in the state of New Hampshire are required to observe wetlands and where they are on their properties. If you have wetlands on your property, you can't turn it into a lawn without going through a permitting process. You can't build on it. Anytime a permit comes into the town to build on a piece of property, the very first thing that the code enforcement officer does is pull up a town-wide wetlands map that we have on file and takes a look at it to see if it's something that he needs to be concerned about on the property. If it looks like it's near wetlands, then a wetlands delineation may be required. And that's of any property in town, not just this particular one.
I understand that, but you told us that the part of the lawn is actually within the wetland, and part of the driveway is within the wetland. So I'm visualizing lawn chemicals going to the wetland and road salt going into the wetland.
So the present driveway is not in the wetlands, it's on town-owned property though.
Okay.
There is a piece of upland that, on this piece of town-owned property, and that is what they are encroaching on. Some of the lawn has probably been built into wetlands, but that's been done over the course of decades when, it may have, the original home was built before there was such a thing as jurisdictional wetlands. So it may well be that backyard and the entire home itself is built on fill portion of the wetlands, but that's, so long ago you can't do much about that. So that's an entirely different issue, but as far as observing it and following up, we don't really have the resources to monitor all wetlands in town that are not owned by the town. We hardly have the resources to monitor the wetlands the town does own. We only have one code officer, and that person is also the building inspector, and he's quite busy. So we do rely on volunteers, our Conservation Commission, to do easement monitoring of the town-owned wetlands, and they do a heavy lift doing that. We own hundreds of acres. So we certainly do not have the resources, nor really the responsibility or the ability to enforce that on private property until it comes before the town for one reason or another. So it's very complicated. These are state laws, they're not town laws. There isn't a whole lot of funding that comes from the state to enforce those mandates.
But your point is taken, and that's yet one more reason for us to do that wetlands delineation, so no further encroachment. And if a permit is pulled, that will be caught.
Yep.
And further reason to take down that shed that's there.
That shouldn't have been put there in the first place.
Have the
Yeah.
town take that down. Anybody else? All right, we had actually decent input. Last couple of public hearings on this, we didn't get much input. so-
Good thing we have 4 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
See if we can double down, maybe go to 8 on it.
We have a motion to close this public hearing so we can vote on it at the next.
So
At the
moved.
next meeting.
And I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. 4 for 2. Okay.
All right, next one.
Up for unanticipated revenue, additional highway block grant funds and municipality-owned bridge aid. I'd make a motion that we enter public hearing pursuant to RSA 31:9-B again.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, this one I'm
Here we are.
very excited about. This is some additional much-needed money. This is coming down to the town from the infrastructure plan from the federal government. It came down through the state, and the state is now doing its allocations. The additional highway block grant funds are being done on the same pro rata basis as the regular highway block grant funds, so they go to each town based on a blended formula of population and lane miles that the town has of public roads. The the municipally-owned bridge aid, I'm not honestly entirely sure how they divvy this up. I believe it's on the same ratio, but it was a little confusing to read through. But the unanticipated highway block grant funds are an additional $164,494. The additional bridge aid money is $237,830. As the board knows, we are looking at resurfacing the Grove Street Bridge now that the Main Street Bridge project is done. That'll be part of our Grove Street rehabilitation process. That will be a costly thing to do, but it's necessary in order to maintain that bridge and prevent us from having to, in some years down the road, go what we just went through with the Main Street Bridge. So we're thrilled to see this. And of course, the additional highway block grant funds, we can use those on any surface road that we have in town, but Seth does have some ideas for where he'd like to put those. We have a culvert that helps to protect Union Street that is in particular in need of repair or complete replacement, actually. So, and that's going to be an expensive project, unfortunately. So.
Is it Union Street or Pine Street?
Union Street. Yeah, so the Pine Street one, that's going to be a bigger price tag. We don't have an estimate on that yet, so we're not bringing that forward just yet. But that's going to be a very expensive thing to do.
You should just close it down.
Go through traffic.
Toll booths now?
Probably should, honestly.
These funds certainly don't pay anywhere near the total cost of what this is going to happen, so.
No, not on Pine Street for sure, not on Grove Street. It could pay for certainly the project that I'm thinking about on Union Streets is at Union and Prospect. These funds would cover that additional cost, which is going to be very helpful. You may have noticed over the last few years, that road gets a lot of washout in the particularly heavy rainstorms. We really need to upsize some of the culverts out there. So that's what we're considering at this point.
Anybody have any questions in the audience?
Objections to taking?
Yeah. It's a real question. Any objections to taking 400 grand?
I just wondered if wildlife considerations are taken, there's consultation regarding culvert upgrades when that comes to wildlife.
So, but I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first half.
I just wanted to find out whether there are consultations with wildlife professionals when culvert upgrades are possible because of funding.
When they're necessary, this one is an existing culvert in an urban part of town, so there's not a whole lot of anticipated wildlife impact, but we always have to go through a certain amount of permitting because there is a stream involved, and so the DES does get involved in that. They have to permit any work at that location. So they certainly, in the Hampshire DESs, are definitely considered specialists in the field.
Yeah, I mean, even in the absence of requirement, I'm just putting it out there that this is an opportunity to consider wildlife, and probably Fish and Game would be more helpful than DES as far as that goes.
Okay.
Anyone else?
So I move that we accept the monies.
Yeah, I'll second that.
You have to think about it.
I was waiting to try to get Tyler this.
Or should have we have done that after we closed the public hearing?
That's fine.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
So Bill's gonna say.
I'm gonna say, Bill seconded.
All right, just like that. 34 minutes, we got 3 public hearings there. Now,
Fun stuff. The main attraction.
welcome Peterborough Renewable Energy
Can I sit
Plan
there?
Committee
Yeah,
tonight.
Thanks. Thank you.
And I'll let you all introduce yourselves as you go.
Okay, great. I'm sitting up here because I've got my notes on my computer. Let me just access them.
big round button in the middle.
Okay, I think I can handle that.
Well, I guess they're not ready to close this one.
So you're just gonna pass it anyway, right?
We are prepared.
So, hi, everybody. My name is Dory Drachman. I am co-coordinator of the Peterborough Renewable Energy Planning Team, or the PREP team, along with Bob Herring-Smith. And we are going to be presenting our plan to the select board, hopefully for your approval. Okay, so I need to do these at the same time. So, let's see, oh, shoot. Sorry. I am, yeah, I think I hit return instead of arrow. But no, it's not.
Oh, that's your end slide, that's why.
Ah, that's why, okay. Never mind. Sorry. Very sorry about the operator error here. Okay, so. Okay, sorry. So, some history. The renewable energy plan that we're presenting tonight started because there was a petition warrant article that several of us that are here tonight also were involved with, that got voted on in the 2021 town meeting, and it passed overwhelmingly with 74% of the vote. The warrant article committed Peterborough to a goal of transitioning to 100% renewable energy, and the specifics are that we would be transitioning to 100% renewable electricity by 2030 and 100% renewable heat and transportation by 2050, and that we would develop a plan to meet these goals by the end of 2022. And that's where we are tonight. The PREP team, many of whom are in this room, is a group of dedicated volunteers. There is no town staff as part of the PREP team, but we have worked very closely with our select board liaison and with town staff. We've also, in the last 6 months, worked with a professional consultant, Pale Blue Dot, out of Minnesota, who has done over 100 renewable energy and climate action plans for communities across the country. So the overarching strategy of this plan is called electrification, or if you want to get technical, beneficial electrification. And it is more than just making everything go on electricity. What it does is gives us a couple of different components. The first one is to reduce the amount of energy that we use through weatherization, through energy efficiency. It also then says to switch our electricity supply to renewable sources, and then we would run our heat and transportation on that renewable electricity. So that's kind of the overview of what the plan is trying to do. And before I get into any of the specifics of the plan, I just want to remind us of what is actually a very happy truth about energy efficiency and electricity, and renewable electricity. And that is that they save money. For every dollar spent on energy efficiency, we save between $2 and $3 on energy production and consumption. Even today, with our skyrocketing electricity costs, the energy that comes from renewables costs 40% less. Our really high electricity costs in New Hampshire are primarily because we rely so heavily on liquefied natural gas. And if we diversified that, our electricity prices would go down. The upfront costs of renewables are indeed high, but they've come down dramatically over the last decade, between 60 and 88%, depending upon the renewable you're talking about. And they're expected to decrease more. When looking at the cost of a renewable or an EV or putting in weatherization, you want to take into consideration not just the upfront costs, but also the lifetime costs, which include both the initial purchase, but also the fuel that is needed to get the usage of that piece of equipment. And when you do that, renewables are definitely less expensive than their fossil fuel counterparts. So I just wanted to kind of make that piece clear before we get into how we're going to make this shift to 100% renewables. So the way we're going to get there is primarily by removing barriers. So I mentioned how the upfront cost for renewables is high. And so that is the barrier we really need to try to get over. And what I found in talking to folks over the last few years about this is that many people, most people, want to transition to renewables. They want to make their homes more energy efficient and to weatherize it. But they, A, don't have the funds, or B, don't know where to start and need help. And so what we want to do with this plan is to remove those barriers. And basically we are primarily going to be talking in this plan about removing those barriers through education, through incentives, and through assistance. We are not going to be using this plan primarily to impose requirements. There will be some of those, but those will be on the municipal sector, not on the residential and business sectors. But for the most part, it will be about just removing barriers. Okay, so some examples of providing information and education. One will be to have a web page with up-to-date technologies and incentives. We know that these things are very fluid. New technologies come up all the time, and incentives happily have been shifting as well. So this is going to be something that will require some maintenance. Another example of providing information and education is through various energy expos. We had one for electric vehicles in the spring. We had a Drive Electric Expo. Those are really good platforms for sharing information. Folks who own those EVs or heat pumps or solar panels, talking to folks who are interested and don't know enough about it, and being able to ask questions. If it's for EVs, being able to drive possibly somebody's car if they're willing, certainly being able to ride in it, and then also being connected to some of the service providers that can help with help residents, move forward with a project. Another way to provide information through this plan is to provide guides and checklists for people who are interested in doing things to their home or to their property. One example is to have a solar ready guide for developers who want to make sure that they have make it as easy as possible for folks to put solar panels on those homes. They can have a checklist or a guide to help them do that. If residents want to convert their building to be net zero, these can be also, we can develop guides and checklists to help them. I want to emphasize these are voluntary. These are not something we are saying you must do, but if people are interested in doing it, we want to provide that information. So, another way that we're going to lower the barriers is to make incentives accessible. Whoops, I just, sorry. Make incentives accessible. We are really lucky that we are doing this plan, or we are proposing this plan this year after Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act, because that really has been a game changer. It is the first time that the federal government has really put some big money into making a transition to renewables. And there are funds in it for everyone. There's funds for residents, for businesses, for municipalities, for renters, for landlords. There is just a lot in here that people can take advantage of. Some of them are dependent on income. You need to have a lower moderate income. Others, though, many of them are available regardless of income. And so we want people to make sure that we want to make sure people know about this. A lot of people don't know about this. And those of us in our little geeky energy circles, we were all thrilled, but most people have no idea. And so we want to be providing workshops and other ways to get this information out to people. In addition to the IRA, we also have New Hampshire Saves, which is the state's energy efficiency program, and there are also some funding involved in that, not nearly as much actually as in the Inflation Reduction Act, but we want to get all of that information out to people, and we'll be able to do it much better than just having it on the state website. We are also, we meaning PrEP, the PrEP team has started the creation of a clean energy fund, which is probably going to become a nonprofit 501c3 that will accept funds from donations to supplement these federal and state incentives with local and possibly regional incentives. We are also in active conversation with local banks to provide affordable loans that can be stretched out for a longer period of time so that people's payment on these loans could be the same or equivalent, it's largely the same as what they're paying now for fossil fuels, but be able to put that money into renewables. So these are some of the ways that we are kind of thinking about how to make incentives accessible. There are a lot more in the plan, and so I forgot to mention this earlier, we really recommend that you read the plan. I can't go over it all tonight because there's 4 sections, 18 strategies, over 100 actions, and so I am both taking pity on you and to everybody here and not going into all those details. But please go to prepnh.org to read the plan. Okay, let's see. So the last way that we are thinking about removing those barriers is by providing assistance to residents, to businesses. One way is to identify what we're calling the solar top 20, which are commercial properties that we think would be really ripe for solar installation, and we could produce like detailed feasibility assessments, and that would include the potential solar generation, the economic performance, the return on investment, all kinds of things that are really, the nitty-gritty that businesses need to be able to assess if they want to go forward with that. And so kind of, handing it to them on a silver platter here. This is what we think you could do on this property, and these are the people that you can call next to try to make this happen. and see if that makes a difference. Another way to provide assistance is something that we've actually already been working on, and that is the SolSmart program. It is a Department of Energy-run designation program that recognizes communities that make it easier for the solar market to grow. In particular, it rewards municipalities that streamline and simplify their solar permitting process. And then they reward those communities with ratings of bronze, silver, and gold. And actually at the last meeting, Danica Malone, our town planner, announced that we got a gold designation, which is fabulous. And one of our prep volunteers, Brian Field, brought this to our attention and brought it to her attention, and then she ran with it. And this is going to be letting solar developers know that we are ready for their business, that this is a community that wants solar, and making it easier and less expensive, because the more permitting that you require, the more expensive that is. And so this is going to be simplifying that. The last way that we are recommending that we make it easier is to provide assistance, is to hire a planning assistant / energy coordinator. This position would be working out of the planning department, because we feel like this is where this kind of work belongs. We know that the planning department is, first of all, does really good work, but is also really overworked and would not currently be able to implement this plan without, either requiring Danica to work way overtime. And so we want to hire a new position to both alleviate some of the work that they're already doing, but also then to be the primary point person to implement this plan. The plan will definitely still have volunteers at its core, but it really needs someone who is going to be attending to it every day. And so we want to have a person on staff who can do that. Remembering what I said before about how renewables save money, a big part of this person's job is to be saving money for the town, saving money for residents, saving money for businesses. So that is a really core part of their job. There's a town in Vermont, Hartford, Vermont, that in the first year, their energy coordinator saved them so much money that they more than paid for their salary. So we really see this as a really helpful way to assist. And one of the reasons that we think this is because we recently sent out a survey that everybody who lives in Peterborough in this room should have gotten a postcard about. And one of the questions in there was what would make it easier for you to reduce your energy use and switch to renewables? And the first one was to have incentives, rebates, which we expected, and that would be something that is in this plan. In second place were these free consultations with a planning assistant and free information sessions and workshops about energy options that also that position would be able to do. In addition to that, we also have on there the town website, which people thought would be helpful, and a bit less helpful, I think, probably also because they might not be familiar with it, is to have an energy monitor, an electricity monitor to know what you're using from which devices. So we really feel like the feedback we got from the survey shows that the plan that we are proposing addresses their needs and addresses what they would need to be able to make this transition. Yes?
Yes.
Sure.
And how many did you mail out and how many responded?
So we mailed it to the whole town. We have 91 respondents, which I know is a small number, but given what we were asking people to do, which was to read this plan, we are actually pretty thrilled.
How many of those people would you say are in this room right now?
You know what? I don't know.
30?
It was anonymous, so I don't know. I don't know how many people are in this room. And I would say more like probably 15 than 30. So, let's see. Okay. So, in addition to lowering barriers, we do recommend some policies. And so I'm just going to give you a sampling. So the policies in there are definitely much smaller in number than the education incentives and assistance components. One of the policies that we are recommending is something else that we are already in process with, and that is community power. You'll get to hear more about it after this presentation. And for those of you who don't know, community power is a new New Hampshire program that allows communities to purchase and otherwise procure electricity on behalf of all of the residents and all of the businesses in a town. And because of that bulk purchase, they can negotiate better prices. It also gives them control over where they source their electricity. And so that you can source it much more according to your priorities. For instance, higher percentage of renewables. And so this is a policy that can definitely help with increasing the electricity, in particular the residential electricity mix to include higher amounts of renewables. Another sample policy is to convert the town's municipal fleet to EVs by 2040 as technology allows. And so this is something that is unusual in our plan. This is asking for a particular kind of purchase, which for the most part we don't do in the plan. The only time that we do, or the only sector that we do this with, is the municipal sector. There are no recommendations in the plan to require a particular kind of purchase for the residential sector or the business sector. But we do think that it is reasonable to ask the town to convert its fleet by 2040, not to, go out right now and buy all new vehicles, but as those vehicles need replacing and as those replacements include EVs, to make those purchases of EVs. The last example here.
Can I ask you a question? And
Sure.
what you're saying here, this is a recommendation or an ask. This is not a requirement of the town that they have to convert their entire municipal fleet by 2040, because it might not be possible.
So if you pass this, this would become policy, that the town would commit to converting their fleet to EVs by 2040 as technology permits. Clearly, if it's not possible to do that, you won't do that. There could very well be certain kinds of vehicles that they haven't figured out quite yet about how to make that work as an EV. That is why we also have in there some policies to use biodiesel as kind of an interim step, and rather than going right to EVs. If by 2040, all of the different kinds of vehicles that the town would use are able to be serviced by EVs, the plan would say that we should be buying those. If it's not, then we would do some of the other recommendations that are in the plan.
Well, and then what happens if the town doesn't?
So this.
Like, I mean,
Well,
Who's the authority that's gonna say you didn't buy all your vehicles but EV by 2040?
There is,
What kind of punishment will there be?
there is no punishment.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I just wanted to clarify, if you approve this plan, you are not automatically committing to that policy. But
Right.
it's something that we are recommending in the plan, and we hope that you will at some point commit to that policy.
Well, I just want to make sure that everybody that's watching this show doesn't think that all of a sudden, if there's something impossible that was, you know, that we didn't mandate it, because the entire vote was committing to a goal
Right?
and not then being requirements, because if, I don't know, we've talked about this for a year and a half or 2 years, if you make it into a requirement or a mandate, then there's going to be a lot less people on board with it.
Well, the original warrant article made it clear that it was not a mandate.
That's right.
And we believe that the case for renewable energy is persuasive enough on its own because of the cost saving and the benefit for health and climate.
Yeah, I agree with that. I
Need to
just
be a
want to make
mandate.
sure it was reiterated for anybody
Yes.
else that isn't already completely on board in this room.
Right.
And I would say that we definitely would not be, well, actually, first let me back up. We have very few statements like this. And as I said, most of what's in there is about lowering barriers.
I gotcha. I didn't mean to drag it up. You can continue.
But we are absolutely not going to be, saying you need to buy an EV dump truck when there isn't one that's going to do the job.
Right, I gotcha.
Yeah.
And so, but that's, and Bill, you make a good point too, and we do have to consider the idea that, 2040 is only 18 years away, I mean, 17 years away, right? And so, the equipment or the vehicles may not even be affordable at that point for a small town like this. And then does anybody remember like the late 70s when there was a push for solar? And then what happened, there were electric cars then. Could we run into that same issue now, depending on who gets in power at some point where all this just gets tossed to the wayside? We go back to,
So
You mean when Reagan took down the solar panels
I
that
don't
Jimmy Carter
specifically
put
want
up?
to say that, but that kind of killed the momentum. Electric cars were sent to the crushers, and
Yeah.
So
we were set back.
I do think that we have enough momentum now that we're not going to go back to a place where there is no solar and there are no EVs. I do think that setting specific goals that are in this plan is what is going to help us get as close as possible to our overall goal as we can. And that is the purpose of requiring in that warrant article to come up with a plan. Because if we don't have a plan, we definitely won't make it there. If we do have a plan, we have a much better chance of making it. And we've got a lot of people that want to work hard on it. And so I think that there is reasonable optimism that we will get very far along that path if we adopt this plan. I do want to go to the next policy example because it kind of represents another type of policy that we talk about, and that is one that establishes incentives for multi-unit and mixed-use development to increase density. So we are recommending to increase density because it will promote more walkability and bikeability in the already developed areas. It also allows for places that don't have development in the town to be able to stay undeveloped, which is going to be important for being able to keep that carbon in the ground or in those trees. And with multi-units, it's also really helpful because that you can conserve energy more easily when units are sharing walls. This would require a change to zoning ordinances if we wanted to establish certain incentives to promote these kinds of developments. And so I want to then just talk about the process for the policies that are in here. all of the policies that are in here that require funding, that change zoning, are going to be decided by the legislative body, like any other policy that would require funding or change zoning, and that would be us at town meeting. So there's not going to be anything in here that's going to sidestep people having more input into those specific pieces. And so I wanted to make that clear in this plan as well. A couple of notes on implementation. We got a lot of feedback saying that, we need to implement this in phases. We can't do this all at the same time, and we completely agree. We didn't put the phases into the draft plan that we put online, partly because we didn't feel like we wanted to do it on our own. We wanted to include staff, we wanted to include the community in figuring out what our priorities were and how we were going to phase them. And so, but rest assured, it will be done in phases. It will also evolve over time as technologies change. So if, we do get some great new EVs that can handle, very large, weights, maybe we could change some of our goals to be sooner. Or if there's really a setback, we could change it to be later. So we know that this is going to be an iterative process, and this is the first iteration of this plan. We will continue to have volunteers be integral to implementing this plan, just as it has been all along. We definitely need to be, we need staff to make this successful, but we also need volunteers. And there will be ongoing opportunities to give your input into the plan. Let's see. In the survey, we see strong support. Up to between 75 and 80% of respondents strongly or either support the plan or strongly support the plan. The dark green is strongly support, the light green is support. So the majority is strongly supporting this plan. So we believe that there will be support for the implementation as well. And then let's see, we've got just a couple more. Wanting to remember why we created this plan in the first place and why we passed that warrant article in the first place. It's because we're in a crisis. The climate is changing faster than we even anticipated. We have gotten feedback that this is too ambitious, that we should move more slowly. And I can tell you, we would love that. We would love to move more slowly. We would love to be less ambitious, but we don't get to decide the timeline. It's physics that's deciding the timeline. It's science. And the science says that we have to cut our emissions in half by 2030 and completely eliminate them by 2050 if we're going to avoid the worst impacts of a changing climate. And so looking up the word crisis, it's a situation that requires urgent action. And so that's what this plan represents. It sets ambitious goals because that's what the situation requires. And just in case you think that just this little town of Peterborough isn't important in the grand scheme of things, there's a new study that's just come out that shows that local action is actually going to be really critical. With the current policies in place, the 50% cut in emissions that we need by 2030 will only be partly achieved. That we'll be able to cut those emissions by 39% with the policy that's in place now. That 11% delta is going to have to be taken up by states, cities, towns, and businesses. They talk about needing ambitious action by those sectors. And in the state of New Hampshire, where there hasn't been much leadership in transitioning to renewables, it's really going to need to be taken up by cities, towns, and businesses. And so what we do in Peterborough is actually really important to making the transition in the country.
Might I add something to that?
Sure.
I think Peterborough is a leader in this area, and other towns will use us as a model for their development.
I would agree. So that is the presentation of our plan. It's, as I said, it's broad strokes. We definitely ask that you go and read it for yourself at prepnh.org. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope that you will approve it so that we can get started. Thank you. And any other questions? I know there were some questions along the way, but any other questions, either I can or a number of other people here could help answer those questions.
Okay, does anybody in the audience have anything to ask? Or add?
I should note that we had several correspondents come in through the select board mail that was in strong support of this plan.
There are also a few with concerns, right?
Concerns in asking that the board not vote to adopt it tonight necessarily. There's no obligation for you to necessarily adopt it tonight, but certainly I think that PrEP has met their obligation to develop the draft plan and put it in front of the board before the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
You still have some editing to do before you have a final version. So, it's entirely up to you if you'd like to move it forward tonight, or if you'd like to respond to those requests and hold off to the next meeting.
I would recommend that we adopt this plan. I want to remind everyone that we've had 2 public sessions already regarding the plan. We held a survey, sent out postcards, just talked a lot. And if people are not aware of the plan by now, it's really their own fault. We've done a lot of work in order to get them to pay attention, so.
Well, we also already voted on this. This is like, we're here, this is a presentation that we've been getting in bits and pieces for like a year and a half. And we voted to move forward with it already, so I'm not even sure what we're voting on. So we already,
So we're voting, the
so we
request
already
is to
decided
adopt.
to do this, so.
I don't think that you decided to adopt the plan because the plan wasn't finished yet.
Gotcha.
So that's what we would be hoping for tonight, is to adopt the plan, knowing that, we will implement it as best we can, but to use it as a kind of a guide for policies and actions moving forward.
I can't possibly think of an objection. It doesn't mandate anybody to do anything. So I can't think, if you're thinking in terms of constituents among the town and voting to do what's best for the entire town, how is it, there's no negative.
That sounded like a motion.
I move that we adopt this plan.
Let's hear from you.
Just a question, what's your plan B if plan A with the assistant working in the town hall doesn't materialize?
Well, there are a couple of possibilities. One is that, we can do the best we can with the volunteers that we have. We can also be looking at other sources of funding for a position like that.
I asked the question because in part, when I was listening to your presentation, I was thinking she could be presenting on the establishment of a nonprofit that could do that work in conjunction with the town, as opposed to asking the town to fund the position.
So that is a possibility. It's been discussed, and the strong preference would be that it would be part of the town because it will need town support to do various aspects of it. If that doesn't happen, we would certainly take up that possibility.
I can add on to that. One of the reasons why I'm in support of creating that position and have included it in my proposed budget that's going to be going to the selectmen in the next week or so, is because the next presentation tonight is going to be talking about a community power plan. And while there will always be a committee that will oversee components of that community power plan, the nuts and bolts of it will require quite a bit of staff support. And I think that having someone who understands that market, understands the grant opportunities that are available, understands, you know, what a person, what a resident, what a business owner has access to is going to be very valuable, not just for the residents, but also for the staff to be able to point people to that person. When we have someone call in and say, you know, I would like to put a solar array in my house, but I know that I can't afford it, you know, full out, what can I do? Well, let me transfer you downstairs, and you can talk to the person who's best able to assist you with that. We do have staff already that do understand, you know, portions of that. You know, of course, the building process or code officer, you know, understands that. Our planning director is very familiar with some of these programs, but not all of them, but it would be really great to have a central person who would be able to assist with that, and also just assist with the regular, busy, day-to-day operations downstairs. There's real value, I think, all the way around.
And there's nothing saying that in the whatever reduction act, what was that?
The Inflation Reduction
Oh
Act.
yeah, Inflation Reduction Act, there's nothing saying that there won't be money to fund exactly that type of position.
There is a lot to be determined in that Inflation Reduction Act. There's, it's getting figured out as we speak.
So, for instance, the money that you accepted earlier tonight for the additional roadway and bridge money, that came out of the transportation bill, the infrastructure bill that passed Congress a year ago and just got to us now. Much of the reason why it takes a long time for those funds to come down is because of the rules writing that has to take place first. So we're not exactly sure how all that will come down and how we'll be able to implement it once it finally gets here.
Yeah, that was a great question, thank you. Anyone else? We had a motion, did we have a motion?
I started to and I got cut off. I make a motion that we adopt the Peterborough Renewable Energy Plan.
All right,
I definitely second.
second there, all those in favor?
My head's all over it.
We have it yet again, thank you. Very exciting.
Thank
All right.
you very
Thanks, Dory.
much, everyone.
Nice
All
work.
right.
Before I sign anything, we're going to make sure we're not repeating any of that information in the next presentation.
Right.
Well, up next, we have a Community Power Task Force presentation on service provider recommendations. Is that Tony?
Do you have a remote that I can?
Yeah, or we get, actually,
Oh, here it is.
yeah, the remote's right there, hold on, let me get the,
I'd like to stand up here. If I
Hold on.
stand over here,
hold on one
can I be seen
second.
and heard?
Yeah, hold on one second, Tony, it's gonna take me a minute.
Okay.
I just remember that I didn't pull your presentation over and make sure that.
While we're waiting.
Oh, okay, fine.
Motion to approve the minutes from December 6th.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, did you catch that, Ally? We.
I'm sure she did.
She's doing it remotely.
You also have some appointments you can run through.
Well, we can also, I move that we authorize town administrator to execute all documents related to the sale of town-owned property on Southfield line.
Yeah, I'll second that. All
Okay.
those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Those are the properties up across from EMS that the town owned at one point.
Well, I can go ahead and make some introductions if
Sure.
All right, thanks.
you're ready while we wait on that. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tony Cassidy. I'm co-chair of the Peterborough Community Power Task Force. With me tonight from the task force is also the other co-chair, Joel Huberman.
up front here. Hard to see in the red shirt. We also
And red mask.
Yeah,
very well
red mask
accessorized.
to match. And also Michael Nadeau, who is our secretary, is here. Dory Drockman, whom we just heard from, is a member of the task force. And also Bruce Tucker is our alternate member, who's very active on the task force. So I've got some people here to help me answer the tough questions when they come along.
There we go. Okay. One second.
There we go. All right. For the Community Power Task Force has completed its valuation of potential all requirements electricity providers for selection as the service provider for Peterborough Community Power. What I've got here is a very high-level overview. In the interest of time, we're not going to go into all of the many details that went into our evaluation process, but I'm going to go through it, and then we'll, of course, be happy to answer questions and fill in more details as you wish. It was on September 7th of last year that the Community Power Task Force was created by the Select Board in your appointment of its 7 members. We then began our evaluation process by meeting with the 3 potential service providers on 2 separate occasions each. Then last December, we decided to place that evaluation process on hold so we could focus our time on development and creation of the Peterborough Community Power Plan in time to get it in front of voters for town meeting last spring. That was done, and then in May of last year at town meeting, the plan was approved by about 90% of the vote. With that behind us, we then resumed the evaluation process by having a 3rd round of interview meetings with each of the potential service providers. Then we issued a request for qualifications, and as we received responses to that, we evaluated the responses, and on December 7th of this year, we completed the process with a vote to choose which service provider to recommend. We're now here to give you that recommendation. The 3 potential service providers who responded to our RFQ are Colonial Power of Marlborough, Massachusetts, and their partner Freedom Energy Logistics of Auburn, New Hampshire, Standard Power of Nashua, New Hampshire, and their partner Good Energy of New York and Boston, and the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. We've been impressed with all 3 of the service providers' qualifications during the evaluation process. They've all provided responses to the RFQ showing that they meet or exceeded all of the minimum qualifications for the task. The chief distinction between the 3 is that 2 of them are brokers, while 1 is a nonprofit coalition. The 2 brokers each have well-qualified staffs and years of experience through their partnerships with both energy consulting and brokerage services in New Hampshire and community power aggregation elsewhere in New England. The coalition was incorporated in 2021, is in the process of launching after having assembled an impressive team of experienced service vendors now under contract. While our evaluation considered a wide range of qualifications and factors, our selection really came down to a choice between the broker model and the coalition model. The broker model basically is this. The broker shops for bids from their vetted list of competitive electric power suppliers, or CEPS, and arranges contracts between the town and the CEPS for service and rates. The CEPS then provides electricity supply and customer services to the town's community power customer base. The contracts are for a fixed price and term and usually range from 2 to 3 years. The CEPS incorporates their risk, profit margins, and broker fees into the rates charged to customers. Under the coalition model, rather than arranging a contract with a CEPS, the coalition essentially operates as a CEPS that is owned and controlled by its members. The coalition manages the electricity supply portfolio, utilizing active portfolio management for purchasing electricity. Along with that, a reserve fund is established for rate stability plus financing of local projects such as renewable energy generation. And a comprehensive energy portfolio risk management policy is incorporated to provide financial safeguards for electricity procurement for its members. So in comparing the two models with the coalition, you get transparency and locally accountable governance, a nonprofit whose members are the municipalities it serves, with a member-controlled reserve fund for accrual and locally controlled investment, active portfolio management for lower stable rates and local project development. Large economic scale provides for lower costs as member portfolios are managed together. And large political scale provides leadership for statewide policy engagement and reform, and a better understanding of the power sector for decision-making and innovation. With the broker model, you get a simple approach since requirements are largely outsourced. There's little local governance and oversight since those are mostly limited to selection of the broker and supply contract approval, and no diversified portfolio adds risk. Using a single supplier and price over a fixed term increases the likelihood of customer financial loss due to utility default rates possibly falling below the community power rate during the term of the contract. So after careful consideration of all of this and many other factors, the task force voted to recommend selection of the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire as the service provider for Peterborough Community Power. And to do that, we recommend approval of 4 CPC&H documents. Those are the cost-sharing agreement, the energy portfolio risk management, retail rates, and financial reserves policies, all subject to town council review. And I'll add, since this slide was created, we've received information from CPC&H. Last week at a board meeting, they discussed in further detail the cost-sharing agreement, and they've made some amendments to that to make some improvements to it, we feel, but those final changes have not been approved yet formally approved by their board. So I would suggest that provided you take our recommendation and approve this, that you approve the documents subject to the CPC&H board's final approval and then town council review and approval. Since Peterborough became CPC&H's 20th member last summer, they've continued to grow and they now have 26 member municipalities with many more expressing interest. Their target window for program launch is spring of 2023 for the first 12 members. And by moving ahead with them now, Peterborough can be one of those 12. We've now completed most of the major steps required for launching community power in Peterborough. The last of those was the approval of our community power plan, which we received from the PUC just last week. Now, if you accept our recommendation of selecting CPC&H as our service provider, the remaining action items are the select board adoption of the 4 documents mentioned earlier, authorizing CPC&H to proceed. They will then handle the tasks of procuring power, coordinating with Eversource, and conducting campaigns for public awareness, notifications, and the opt-in, opt-out process. We'll need to hold public hearings 15 days after the customer notification is mailed out, and then Peterborough Community Power will be ready to launch with a target date of April or May of next spring. Any questions?
I have one. What, a quick snapshot, what is the cost sharing agreement, like whose cost? What, can you explain that a little bit more for anybody that's like me that doesn't know?
Sure. Matter of fact, I just happen to have a slide on it.
Well, if you're already gonna go over it, don't bother now. I mean, if you're already gonna touch on it.
No, I was done. This is just in case you want to know
Oh,
about it.
perfect.
Basically, it ensures costs are fairly tracked and allocated among all of the members. It delegates authority to CPC&H to provide service for Peterborough Community Power and all the other members, and it provides operational clarity to all the parties. The changes that they just made this past week had to do with adding some wording so that members who join up, sign up, if, say, we sign up and we get the electric rates once they've gone out and and done all the shopping, they come back and say, here are the rates we can provide for Peterborough. If we don't like those, if they're not favorable enough compared to the Eversource default rate, we have the option to say, no, we don't want to go forward. And so we can delay going forward, or we can back out of the agreement completely if we want. That wording wasn't as clear before, and they've changed that up a bit. There's also, if at any time before electricity is purchased on behalf of Peterborough Community Power, we decide we want to back out of the agreement, we can. And at any later dates, there's also wording for what our options are for getting out of the agreement, should that happen. We don't expect
Sounds
it
like they're pretty confident. That's good.
So that's what that's about.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Question, I'm wondering if the CPC&H model provides for 4 options?
It does. And I might just happen to have a slide on that. This is what they're aiming for, which very much mirrors what's in our plan. There would be the 4 options. These may not be the final names of these, but Granite Basic will meet the renewable portfolio standard that the state of New Hampshire has, which is currently 23.4% renewable energy. That will be the lowest rate. Then there will be Granite Plus, which is going to be roughly somewhere around 1/3 renewable. That will very possibly be the default rate, but you can opt down or opt up to any of these rates as you want. And then there will be a Clean 50 and a Clean 100, which is 50% renewable or 100% renewable. So everyone will have the option to pick which of those they prefer.
Kate Kuhn, so the question is, the member, therefore, in this case, the town of Peterborough? Or is it me as an Eversource? No, it's the town of
The
Peterborough.
member is the town of Peterborough.
Yeah.
And as a member of CPC&H, the town of Peterborough has one member on their board. That's Steve Walker, who's also on the task force. And Danica Malone, who's on town staff, is the alternate to the board.
Does that mean that the individual utility customers are not choosing a product? It's chosen for them by the town?
No. They will get, if they don't make any other choices, if you're already on the Eversource default rate, then this will be an opt-out option for you. So if you don't opt out and you don't make any changes, you'll automatically be put on the default rate of Peterborough Community Power. If you choose to opt down or opt up, you can, or you can opt out of the program altogether if you wish. Dory?
Just to clarify that what the town or the task force and the town will be deciding is what the default rate will be. And which one of these we are going to decide will be our default.
Right.
And then the individuals can either just automatically get put into that default or opt up or down or out.
And we've had lots of discussion on this. We'll see what the rates, where the rates land when they first come in. And, if we could get Clean 50 at less money than the Eversource default rate, well, Clean 50 may be our default on this, but we don't know where those are going to end up.
May I go? I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to pose it to you anyway.
See if I know it.
That's the test.
Are these models used, other communities use the broker versus coalition model, right? And
Yeah.
we researched those. What's the preferred model?
Among what has been chosen the most so far, you mean?
Well, no, not in the state, but across the country.
Oh, across the country. California was a leader in community power aggregation, and they started out with a lot of people using the broker model. Since then, as these joint powers agencies or coalitions have come into being, a lot of people are seeing that there's advantages to that, and so the trend is going to the coalition model. Massachusetts is mostly broker model because they have not had a coalition to choose. But any state where they've got coalition and broker, the trend is towards coalitions or JPAs.
So Tony, nothing is free, obviously. Who makes the money in a coalition? Obviously, in a broker situation, the broker's making money.
Right. In the broker situation, the broker and the competitive electric power supplier are making money. In this case, the coalition is the competitive electric power supplier, and there is no broker. So no one's making money because they're a non-profit. Now, there are electric generators out there that are selling the electricity. They'll make money when they sell us electricity, but no one through the process of the coalition as the CEPS, there's no one making profits.
There will be paid staff, though.
Yes.
There will be paid staff on the
Right.
coalition,
Sure.
and certainly there's that, but none of the board members are going to be making money.
One more, so if we adopt this plan, then everybody in Peterborough goes to this, you get to decide if you want to opt into
You
this,
get to
right?
decide if you're...
Opt-out. It's an opt-out.
Wait a second, so automatically your electric bill is changing over to a different supplier whether you want it to or not?
If you currently are buying or if you're currently using Eversource, which is the default,
Yeah.
if they are your electric power supplier, then you will be converted over to our default rate unless you opt out.
Okay,
Now, if you're not buying your power from Eversource, but if you've gone out and chosen an alternative electric power supplier,
yeah,
then you will not be opt-out, you will be opt-in. You won't automatically be put on this, because some of those people, if they cancel their agreement with that electric power supplier, they're gonna pay a penalty, and we don't wanna cause any penalties. And once you get put on this, if at any time in the future you decide you don't want on it anymore, you can cancel and there's no penalty.
okay, I think that needed to be said.
L. Ennis, is there a provision for an individual, say, perhaps even a town, to transition over to solar or renewable on their own? I got a big solar panel. How does that affect the rates, or is there a provision for that in this system?
Well, if you have solar panels on your home, or you put solar panels on your home, and you want to do net electric metering, so that you sell power back to the grid, as well as buying power from the grid, depending on whether it's day or night or whatever, you can do that. Today, you can do that if you're on the Eversource supply. And with community power, you'll still be able to do that, with community power being your electric supplier.
Will we know the rate that they would pay, or how
Yes.
they would convert back?
Yeah.
It's not part of the
So
system.
we will know that. Bruce?
Bruce Tucker, also on the task force. One of the reasons why I liked the coalition model was that they had a net metering rate that was proposed, and neither of the broker models included that as part of their proposal. So, since we want to encourage more solar, this was the best way we felt to do that.
Tony, so I did switch from Eversource to, I think I chose Direct Energy with a 100 renewable plan for like a 2-year commitment. So, being that's my setup, will I still get notified when this goes into effect, so I'll know what that rate is and see if I could possibly change over to it, or since I'm already on that other plan, I won't be?
You'll be notified, but you'll be opt-in, not opt-out.
Gotcha. Okay. Anyone else?
Is the coalition treated as a utility by the Public Utilities Commission?
I don't think so, no.
They are not. Eversource will continue to be the utility, because they're the ones that are actually providing, they're distributing and moving the electricity to your home. So they will continue to be the utility, as will Unitil and any other power utilities in the state. Essentially, they will be acting as a supplier, just like Eversource does on the supply side, Direct Energy does in the example that Tyler just gave, and so on.
Right, it's pretty important, because Eversource still owns the wires and the poles. They still maintain them, so when we have snowstorms and trees come down on them, that's Eversource still taking care of that.
And
The
you'll
town
still be
has nothing to
receiving
do
a
with it.
bill from Eversource. So that's the other thing to keep in mind, is that that is not going to change even after, something like this goes into effect. Your bill will still come from Eversource. You'll still be sending a check to Eversource. And one of the things that was very important to me when we first started talking about this community power plan was that the low-income programs that Eversource maintains and operates will still be in effect. There will be no changes to how those programs operate even after this gets kicked off. So that was, nothing will change there as far as your average consumer is concerned.
I do have a question, speaking of snowstorms and power outages. It doesn't really relate to this, but people that did have solar backup, I assume they had a generator attached to that? Does anybody know the experience, what happened in town with this last outage? It seemed like a lot of people were out, and how'd that hang?
I have, Bob Herringsmith, I have both solar and a standby generator. The setup is such that when the generator is in operation, the solar panel, the solar infrastructure recognizes that and shuts down. So I guess the problem is that the electric supply provided by a generator is not as consistent as what comes through the grid. And it's not a good idea to have the solar panels trying to operate at that same time. So,
And they can't be sending power back through the lines that people are trying to fix because they'll electrocute.
So
yeah.
I have a different experience. I have solar panels and then I also have a backup battery. And I did not experience any power outage. It automatically goes into being able to kick in the battery and being able to use that. So I filled the battery before the storm, and then the battery was able to kick in when the power did go out, and I didn't experience any.
And you still are charging your batteries when the sun's out.
When the sun's out, yes.
Yeah.
So you had a shut off that would shut it off from going back to the grid?
Exactly.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's how the batteries work.
Thank you for that tidbit. So are we ready to make a vote on their choice, or are we at that point?
I think so.
All right. I would make a motion that we go along with that recommendation and use the CPCH.
Yep.
Subject to
Subject to the stipulations.
stipulations.
Noted.
My second.
Town council approval. All right. Anyone want to stop this right now before we, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, another great step.
One more thing.
Tony, I gotta commend you. You're real good with that remote. Seamless.
Andy had slides full of information about questions.
For questions.
There is one more outstanding piece of business that will go along with this. With that vote, the official duties of the Community Power Task Force have been completed. I recommend that the selectmen consider converting the Community Power Task Force to the Community Power Committee, and consider reappointing them at a future meeting. If they choose not to opt out.
So they do have a opt-out.
There is an opt-out.
I'm wondering if we could increase our membership to 8, so that Bruce could be a voting member. He has been such a valuable resource
We want
for
to find
us.
out if somebody opts out first?
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. We can find that out.
Somebody could quit.
Or we'd have
Yeah.
to make it 9 so you could.
Okay, there you
Eight
go.
members could have a tie vote.
Forum, so,
Well, that's
You can
great.
give them a plaque or something. Participation trophy.
We knight them right here after the vote.
I think we'll just wait and see. Give everyone the opportunity to opt out. You got your 15 days. Consider this your postcard. If you would like to opt out, just send me an email. Otherwise, I'll have your appointments ready for the select board at their next meeting.
Right, because going from task force to town committee, then have to abide by RSA 91A.
Well, they've always had to anyways.
Oh, they did.
This is actually a requirement of the state law and the community power plan that there be a standing community power committee.
Great.
So now that this is official, the PUC has accepted the plan. This was really the last piece of business that the task force had.
So do we need to formally disband the task force and then
I think just-
formally?
Change the name?
It's
Yeah.
just, it's magic.
Change in name only.
Okay. So I would make a motion that we convert the community power task force into a standing community power committee for the town of Peterborough. With the existing members.
Right.
Unless
there's a...
And we had a second.
Yes, I'll second.
Aye. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
And that's a, what, 20-year term? Did we?
2040.
Yeah, 2040, because they're gonna be here to face the music.
That's right. Actually, it's 2050, yeah.
Could you double our salaries while you're at
Yeah.
2 times 0. Yeah, great, thank you. Excellent. All right.
Is there one other thing down there?
You've got the votes to appoint. You have a-
Right. We have, yeah, I'd make a motion that we appoint Bonnie Tucker to the EDA Affordable Housing Subcommittee, Charles Peter LaRoche and Jerry Galus to the Southfield Road TIF Advisory Committee, and Ivy Vann to the Greater Downtown TIF Advisory Committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Right.
More volunteers. Well, more volunteers doing more.
Those look like
volunteering.
pretty familiar names.
Yeah. And we authorize you to sign that, and we did the minutes. Excellent. Anything else?
Well, see you later.
So there's some of us going to Cooper's, if anybody would like to celebrate.
Well, if we didn't make a reservation, what if we didn't pass on it?
We could either commiserate or celebrate.
Right, we could have cried into our beer, but
Boy, was I hell of a
Question
laser.
is, what time is it?
My God.
I'm very interested in that.
I have a Powerball.